Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of The Curtain Call. This is not Michael Beck. If you are here tonight looking for the great Canadian Michael Beck, you're about 24 hours too late because of some scheduling difficulties. I was traveling back into town on Tuesday night, which is normally the Scobro show. Today, I have to say it, I even said who I am yet for those of you that might be coming in for the first time. But today is Michael Beck's birthday. So we decided to give the guy the day off. But filling in for him, I am Dave Schofield, co-editor of Behind the Steel Curtain. And always on Wednesday nights is Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, how are you doing this lovely evening?
I'm doing good.
So first, most important question. What do you think about your typical co-host turning a quarter of a century today?
He's 25.
He's 25.
Oh, he's a kid.
Yes. I was talking about this on Steelers Stat Geek, that I'm like, wow, he's Canadian, West Coast, and young, like everything I'm not. And skinny.
Anti-BTSC.
That's what I should have said. And skinny. But no, but he's a big Steelers fan, so that's what brings us all together. But didn't know if you realized that was what birthday he was celebrating.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I know. I actually thought he was a little older than that. Okay.
Yeah, but no, man, he's one of the young bucks. He's getting our youth infusion here at Behind the Steel Curtain. But here we are. This is the curtain call. Sorry that it's me. I really am, but I'm really glad to be back on YouTube. It's been over a week because I wasn't there for the Steelers preview. This is just kind of weird for me, but I am really happy to be here with my pal Geoffrey Benedict because we work together every week anyway. We just work together on the editorial side of Behind the Steel Curtain. We do an article together each week. Now, pretty much each week. We did have a break in there when we had some crazy draft stuff, to where we break stuff down. In case you're wondering in the description, wondering what we're talking about, the title of that article is Steelers Vertex. Geoffrey, you want to explain Steelers Vertex?
Yeah, this is actually, I believe I suggested it in the list of names, and Dave was like, whoa, that's the best one. But a vertex is just a point on a plane where two lines intersect. And the idea is I bring the film line, Dave, our resident stat geek, brings the stat line, and we find a point in the middle to see where they match up. And it's actually, I gotta say, it's my favorite article we do, because normally I'm just out there looking for myself. I'm looking for angles and things to show, and often I'll just watch game film and hope something jumps out at me. But Dave always gives me stats, gives me numbers, gives me something to start from, and I always find something interesting on the film with it. So I always have fun doing the vertex.
Yeah, and it was birthed out of just an idea of, Geoffrey, I have some really weird. This was in season. I'm like, I got some interesting stats, but I don't know if the film really lines up with it. Does the film match what I'm actually getting with these numbers? And I asked you the question, I'm like, let's do an article together. What do you want to do? And we just did it, and it just took off from there. So I don't know that it's our most viewed article on the site, but the people that like it look for it and really enjoy it. It's kind of something that it's got to fit perfectly, not perfectly, but it fits a certain type of fan. So we're glad we can do that. And it is honestly, it's one of my favorite ones to do too, because how do I say it? It's my favorite article to edit because usually I go in, say what we're doing. This week was a little bit backwards because usually I do the stats, then you do the film, and then we figure out the point. This week was backwards because I was away where Geoffrey had to do the film first. But I like putting in the stats. I love reading over your stuff just to see where you're going. And usually what happens is I go to write the point at the end, but I don't have to because I just take Geoffrey's last paragraph and copy it over because he does it pretty much at the end of his anyway. And it's a lot of fun. So before we dive into, we're going to get into a topic tonight that we've been covering on our Vertex articles that we just thought would be nice and fun to do for the podcast. And that is looking at who the Steelers lost, who they gained, who's going to be replacing those losses, how do they line up statistically and film wise to what the Steelers are going to be doing. But before we do that, there was there was a couple different things that happened today. Well, really not a lot. It's still OTAs. Next week is mandatory minicamp. Not a lot out of OTAs today. I was disappointed. If you're one of those people that reads the article where we do the tracker and update all these different film clips and stuff, not a lot of news out of OTAs today. But, and Geoffrey's enjoying the live chat right now, I can tell. So now where was I going? Oh, 2 players spoke to the media today. And I asked Geoffrey, I'm like, did you get to hear either one of these? He's like, no. I'm like, good, because I have a question about one of them. But first thing I'll do is I'll mention the other. Juju Smith-Schuster basically was talking about his free agency. He's talked about, choosing to come back to the Steelers, talking about, would like to have a 4-year deal, but kind of had the tone of he expects it to not be in Pittsburgh. I don't know. Well, that's how some people read it. I don't know if it was much of a tone as he expected to not be in Pittsburgh as much as this is where the only place I'm ever going to be, which people take as the tone of he's not going to be in Pittsburgh.
I think he just accepts it, especially after last year, what he went through this past season. Like, he knows that's not in his control. That's not something he controls. And if it's going to be like, there's always the option like, hey, you could take a veteran minimum contract. No, he's not going to do that. No. You're not going to go from a rookie contract, to a 1 year to all of a sudden you're taking nothing when you're at your prime. So to me, I think you see Juju Smith-Schuster just understanding the business of the league and knowing that whether he comes back to the Steelers or not, that's not up to him entirely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's kind of just the reality of the situation. And I saw, believe it or not, it was Michael Beck putting it out on Twitter about how Juju commented about choosing the Steelers. Like, oh man, I don't know how I could have ever faced my fans if I'd have gone to the Ravens. Well, that's because he is all about the brand and building his brand and having a good brand. So therefore, a lot of that brand is coming from the Steelers fans. So that would have been a tough one to handle. I don't know about you, but I think if Juju, I don't want to, put the cart before the horse because we still got a 2021 season and a lot can happen there. But if Juju Smith-Schuster is not in black and gold after this year, I would not be shocked if it's with an NFC team, just because I think he wants to not, quote unquote, abandon his fan base that also consists of people because of Steeler fans. So just interesting to hear from him. He has, I don't even know if I'd try to describe the color of his hair, but he said he can't dye it anymore. He's afraid it's going to fall out. So he's got to leave it the color it is. So, but what I really wanted to ask you about, it was, and I'm sorry, I hope I don't get cut off. I have a pretty big storm rolling through at my house right now. I hope I don't lose internet or electricity or anything. If not, Geoffrey gets to do his first solo show. So Devin Bush was asked a question today. And the question was, could he cover Jarvis Landry in the slot? And his answer was...
Well, the answer would be yes.
The answer was 100% is what he said.
Yeah, that's the answer.
I wanted to know your thoughts.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Can Devin Bush cover Jarvis Landry? 100% yes. Yes, he can. Is it going to be, Darrelle Revis in his prime covering Jarvis Landry? No, but he can cover him. He's covered people just that fast. He's covered people that shifty. He can cover him. No problem. Yeah, I agree with him. I'm glad he said it. That's my guy. A lot of people know I was born in Michigan, Adrian, Michigan. And I'm a University of Michigan fan. Even now I live just north of Pittsburgh, but yeah, I'm a huge Michigan fan. Love Devin Bush. Was ecstatic when they got him, and he absolutely can cover Jarvis Landry in the slot.
Well, that's what I wanted to know from you, what your thought was on that, because, as we know, we all keep bringing it up, the whole John Bostic on Keenan Allen, that I'll never let go. I feel like I'm in Titanic. I'll never let go.
Well, people need to understand some of that is by scheme, But how we deal with these funky formations where people put tight ends outside and little slot receivers inside with a threat to run. Like, you don't put Vince Williams out there on a tight end.
There on the sideline.
Yeah, you don't do that. Because then he can't help you in the run game. So, like, yeah, can Devin Bush cover Jarvis Landry? He absolutely can. Part of the reason being, if Jarvis Landry runs deep on him, there's a safety back there looking to help. Anytime the Steelers do that, there is a safety deep. And that's why most of the time you see them get beat. Either a safety made a mistake deep, or it was some little shallow route. And the Steelers will give that up. They'll take that yards.
Yeah. I mean, 4-yard pass play is about the same as a 4-yard run. But the thing is, I always looked at it 4 yards of play. When I was coaching, I remember this was made a lot of running the ball, not as much passing, except my last year coaching, we couldn't run the ball. So we were passing all the time. If you're talking about I would take a 4-yard run play every play because, 3 plays of doing that and you got a first down and you just keep churning it out. But the problem is on a pass play, if you're only doing 4-yard pass plays, you're not going to complete every pass. It's not like you're going to do that, complete every pass in a game. So eventually, if you're only talking 4-yard passes, eventually you're going to have an incompletion and you're going to have to do something else. So I know what you mean. Giving up that short pass is something that you sometimes have to be willing to do in order to do that. And I just wanted to hear what you would say about that with Devin Bush. He said he's somewhere between 80 and 90% with his knee right now. He expects to be 100% by training camp. What do you think of that?
That's the news we need to hear, man. Yeah. Like the stuff he was doing last season was incredible. Incredible. Like, he was on his way to being in that, like, Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly tier. Maybe not equal to them in their prime, but he was trending that direction. The stuff he was able to do. And the Steelers were just like, we can do so much. We can attack so many different places. We can shorten the amount of space the safeties and cornerbacks have to cover because we can just dump a whole bunch of responsibility on Devin Bush and he can handle it. And so when he was there, man, like, really, if you look at the sack numbers by the Steelers, the big drop-off was when Devin Bush went out. Like, they were getting crazy sacks early. Devin Bush goes out, those numbers go down.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't attack quite as crazily as they were because they didn't have Devin Bush backing everyone up. And that's one of the reasons Devin Bush didn't have those splash numbers he had in 2019. Well, I'm getting into stuff that we should be talking about.
I know. And we're going to. And because I was going to say something we're definitely going to talk about is we talked about it in today's Vertex article. And that was, sometimes your numbers might not be the same, but that's because you have more responsibility. That's exactly what you brought up even with Steven Nelson. So we are going to go through this and we're going to talk about losses versus gains. We're going to start. It's funny. We have more to talk about on defense. So we're going to start on defense because the last thing we want to do is wait till the second half of the show and then not have enough time to do it. So we're going to start with defense now. Geoffrey, where do you want to start? What position would you like to start at for the 2021 Steelers? Look at the players that they lost and who they have that's going to be filling in or the gains that they had to their roster.
Well, let's start off big. Let's start with the number one loss they had last season. The number one guy. Who would be the number one? Who would be the number one free agent loss there we had?
The number one free agent loss is Bud Dupree because he's in line to give the Steelers a 3rd round comp pick. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're looking at that, but I mean, just based on salary. So here's my question though. This is a good one. Bud Dupree has that big salary to really have the Steelers in line for a good comp pick. Is it that Dupree himself is that good, or does that just go to show how much edge rushers get paid?
Okay, this is my take on Bud Dupree. The NFL has changed, right? Okay, the NFL is putting more and more athletes in at quarterback. Mm-hmm. James Harrison in today's league wouldn't be like you put a James Harrison over there by himself. He can beat any offensive tackle over there. But if the quarterback can just run away from him, there's no sack there. You're not getting any sacks.
Yeah.
And we actually saw that in 2016 when James Harrison still was pretty decent. And yet Bud Dupree was out and the Steelers got no sacks. They had like 13 sacks in 9 games. It was pathetic. Slightly over 1 sack a game. It was one of their worst seasons to that point. And then Bud Dupree came back. And if you remember, if you fast forward a year, you go to the playoffs when they faced Miami in 2016. That was 2016, right?
I was at that game.
Yeah. What happened?
It was really, really, really cold.
Quarterback is like, I'm getting out of the pocket. I'm going to run out here. Boom. He doesn't play the rest of the game. That play live in stadium, and I've said this so many times, but I'm going to say it again because I don't think I've said it on a show with you, so I get to say it again. I have never seen a defender close at that rate sitting at the game. And I'm like, was it because I was here this looked so impressive? And then I watched it on TV and I'm like, yeah, it looked really good on TV too. That was something. I mean, he just closed and just, my goodness. And how in the world they had him come back in the game later was just weird. Yeah.
Sad. That shouldn't have happened. But
that is what Bud Dupree brought. And this is my key thing on Bud Dupree. In a league that more and more is focusing on getting quarterbacks out of the pocket and away from pressure, especially in a league driven by a lot of interior pressure. Guys like Aaron Donald, Cam Hayward, and Stephon Tuitt, a lot of interior pressure. Quarterbacks leave the pocket. What Bud Dupree brought to the Steelers was not allowing that to happen. You don't leave the pocket when Bud Dupree is at all on the field. Even if he's on the opposite side of you, he will run you down.
Yeah.
We saw that with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson tried to escape to Bud Dupree's side. They had TJ Watt just crash the pocket. I love watching TJ Watt play because one of the reasons TJ has such great stats is in our system. All he does is just go get the quarterback. They're like, he is just, like that dog. You're like, sick him. And TJ just boom goes for the quarterback. And often if it's a passing yardage play, he's not even reading the run. He's not prepared to deal with the run, and you can run the ball. He's not thinking run. He's not looking to defend the run, even secondarily. He is straight up 100% gunning for the quarterback. And when you have a guy as good at getting to the quarterback as TJ Watt is, that's what you do. But on the other side, you've got a guy named Bud Dupree who doesn't let that quarterback escape. And on Lamar Jackson play, TJ Watt crashes the pocket. Lamar tries to escape forward. Cam Hayward blocks his path. Cam Hayward has this offensive lineman. He's basically two-gapping the offensive lineman. And he's like, whichever way you go, I got you, right? So he tries to go outside. Bud Dupree does the same thing to him. So TJ Watt ends up on the ground behind him, right? So he goes, okay, I'm going to escape out to the right. And Lamar Jackson got ran down by Bud Dupree for a sack. Like he ran him down from containing him in the pocket on one side to running him down when he was running out the other way. Ran him down and sacked him. And that's, you just don't get out of the pocket. And when the players don't get out of the pocket, not only do you get sacks, but in Cleveland, we saw Baker Mayfield try to escape. Bud Dupree wouldn't let him escape. And eventually he threw a stupid pass and the Steelers got an interception. Like that's what Bud Dupree brings is containment. And to me, the value of Bud Dupree is in the current NFL, containment is so big. That's such a huge deal. And you just didn't see guys leaving the pocket when Bud Dupree played. You didn't see them escaping. You think of that week 15 loss to Cincinnati, right? Ryan Finley, whatever quarterback they had playing, nobody just runs out. They fake the pass and he just runs out, scores a touchdown, easy as going. You don't see that when Bud Dupree was playing. You would not see that. So the biggest loss with him and the biggest gain to another team is that containment, is that smart pass rush where it's great run defense, incredible pocket containment, and then pass rush after that, right? Steelers faced the least rushes to Bud Dupree's side of the field to that like offensive left of any team in the NFL last season while Bud Dupree played. By the end of the season, script had totally flipped. They were facing runs to the left all the time, especially when Cassius Marsh was in. It got bad. Cleveland was just like, always run that way. And they saw so few quarterbacks escaping the pocket. They lead the league in sacks. My favorite stat is the Steelers in any given season when Bud Dupree plays, right? In the games Bud Dupree plays, they have never averaged less than 3 sacks a game. From the 2014 season when they were terrible getting sacks to 2015, Keith Butler takes over, Bud Dupree starts playing 3 sacks a game when he's playing. I think they had 48 sacks in 16 games. 2016, slightly over 1 in the 9 games he doesn't play. In the 7 games he plays, boom, 3 sacks a game. They had the most sacks in the last 7 games of the season of any team in the NFL. 2017, 2018, 2019, all of them were leading the league in sacks. 2020, the 11 games that Bud Dupree plays, 3.7 sacks per game. In the 6 games he was out, 2.5 sacks per game. The Steelers.
Yeah, I assume you're including the playoffs in that one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I include playoffs across the board.
Yes.
Almost any stat I do, I can include playoffs. If you take off the playoff game, it's exactly 3. It's 15 sacks in 5 games, and then 15 sacks in 6 games. But we've never had a season, a stretch of games in the season where Bud Dupree didn't play that we've had 3 sacks, and when he does play, we've never had less than that. Since 2010, the Steelers have only averaged 3 sacks a game in a season when Bud Dupree is playing. So that's a big deal to me. I also happen to go along with that. I don't think he's going to be great in Tennessee. The only way he's going to be great in Tennessee is if they've got another pass rusher, right? If you've got a young stud pass rusher, Bud Dupree is the perfect guy to pair with him because he's going to give that guy opportunities. He's going to take a lot of the nasty situations, and then, he's going to take some of the tougher work and let that guy just rush. That's what he did for TJ Watt. And so I'm just going to move right. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of taking over the show here, but no. I'll move right in.
That's good.
The big question mark replacing him. Alex Highsmith is a better pass rusher than Bud Dupree.
And that was going to be my next question. I was like, all right, so let's look at a replacement. His replacement is Alex Highsmith for this year. What's going on?
I love Alex Highsmith.
Yeah,
I'm super high on Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith is not quite on the level of Bud Dupree at run defense, but he is dang good. Dang good. He's better than Bud Dupree was early on in his career. As a pass rusher, I think he's better right now than Bud Dupree has been in his career. The question is, how do the Steelers make up for that containment? How do the Steelers counter that? Because in today's league, you're facing guys like Josh Allen. We're going to face Lamar Jackson twice. Baker Mayfield can scramble. Joe Burrow can scramble. These guys will get out of the pocket, evade the rush, and turn what should have been a sack into 5 to 10 to 15, sometimes longer runs. That's the current NFL. Or they'll buy time and make a pass downfield when they roll out of the pocket. How do the Steelers replace that? Because with Bud Dupree, TJ Watt was just free to go. He was just straight, green light, rush the passer. Don't worry about containment. Don't worry about anything. Cam Hayward, Bud Dupree, 7-on-2 it. They'll keep the show together. You just go get the quarterback. You go create havoc. And he did. He created tons of havoc that way because they couldn't escape. And I don't think it's just on Alex Highsmith to be that containment guy. It's going to have to come from everybody. It's going to have to come from Tuitt and Watt, who don't rush with contain normally. They're going to have to be smarter about it. And, it's TJ Watt. He can do it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, TJ Watt can't rush with contain. It's TJ Watt. He can do it. And he better be able to do it. I mean, for goodness sakes, he's going to get paid incredibly after this season. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He better be able to get sacks and also contain the pocket.
And what's interesting you say about getting paid, Thursday morning Steelers Stat Geek, which is on our audio-only side of our podcast, which if you aren't listening to those of you that are live here on YouTube and Facebook, you are missing a lot of our content and a lot of other stuff that we have with Jeff Hartman's Let's Ride on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. I have my Steelers Stat Geek on Thursday mornings, Michael Beck as his live mic. We also have the War Room. I almost called it the Cap Room, but we had switched it with Matty Peveril. Other things that we have there. If you're not listening to us on the podcast side, you're missing all those. But my Steelers Stat Geek this week is actually when should TJ Watt get paid? Before 2021 or before 2022? That's what the breakdown is, and the numbers behind why you would do it one way or the other. So we're not going to get into that now because we're getting into this. But you brought up an interesting point that I want to then ask. Something that we noticed with the Steelers that I think that their coaching staff does and is forced to do, and I see that we have a super chat, I'll get it here in a little bit, is that we as fans look at the coaching staff and say, oh, they don't adjust to stuff in game and whatnot. How often do you see the Steelers having to adapt to kind of, how do I say it? The strengths versus the weaknesses of individual players. It seems like they're scheming around that all the time, and a lot of people don't realize it. For example, what Bud Dupree brought, exactly like you described, is what allows them to do what they do with other people. And if Bud Dupree's not there to do it, you're not going to ask Alex Highsmith to come in and do the same thing because you want to use Alex Highsmith to his strength, which means somebody else is going to have to do something. We'll talk about Mike Hilton shortly. He's a very different slot corner than what most people use. And honestly, as much as I think he's a good player, I don't trust Cincinnati to use him properly at all, because if you want him to come in and be the typical slot corner, it's not going to happen. And you said over and over when we finally get to it, I mean, these are all people we're going to talk about. Even Alejandro Villanueva, it takes a very special player to play next to him based on his strengths and weaknesses. And that was part of the problem. So sometimes you also have to look at how these players all fit together. And is it kind of a testament to the Steelers coaching staff to bring these players together in order to put them where their strengths lie?
Yes. Yeah, I think, and I think you've seen it. I think people are going to immediately say, like, Keith Butler stinks at getting the secondary in the right places. Coverage failures are a big thing. Keith Butler is one of the best front seven coaches and pass rush coordinators you'll ever see. Maybe one of the best ever. As far as his blitzes and his run defense and his use of just the front seven, I'm gonna go out there and tell you, Keith Butler's better than Dick LeBeau. He's flat out better than Dick LeBeau.
When looking at
Dick LeBeau
just
had an
that
entire
part.
defense.
Yes.
Keith Butler had the front seven.
Yeah.
And as we all saw, 2015 to 2018, he had no idea what to do in coverage.
Yeah.
The man didn't. But it's hard to get rid of someone when they're one of the best pass rush coordinators you've ever seen. Like that, he's a special talent there. So what do you do? I can see what you're saying with that. I mean, that's really tough to say it's better than Dick LeBeau, because Dick LeBeau, like you said, could handle it all. Yeah. But he had a whole scheme, and his scheme was his system for the time he developed it to the time he ended was incredible. Yeah. It's a totally different show. Yeah. Dick LeBeau is one of the best defense coordinators of all time. Don't get me wrong there.
But if you look at Keith Butler's a better look at Keith Butler doing everything, you would say nowhere close. But if you're nowhere close, just nowhere doing close. This part of it, he does, and that's why you bring in a Terrell Austin. That's why you bring in Terrell Austin, and you say, you guy who had Cincinnati secondary looking like they were great, but couldn't get pass rush out of Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins, like that. Mm-hmm. They had great front four, and they couldn't get a sack. So they bring him in, and they're like, "Hey, you're going to be our secondary coordinator." Kind of, it's basically what he does. He coordinates the secondary, and since then we've seen that kind of playing to people's strengths in the secondary, which has turned Minkah Fitzpatrick from a college player, they gave him Minkah Fitzpatrick, who didn't have a position. Yeah, well, really think about it. Minkah Fitzpatrick came out of college; he didn't have a position. He's in Miami. They're like, where to put him? Where are we going to play him? He's not a slot cornerback. He's not a strong safety. He's not a free safety. He's not an outside cornerback. He's a talent with no position. Mm-hmm. He comes to the Steelers. They figure it out. They figured it out. Yeah. They said, okay, what is he good at? Have him do that. And we'll change the defense to fit his strengths and let him go. And he's been one of the best defensive players in the NFL because they're using him right. And that also kind of leads into our second group of people, the inside linebackers. Which we will get to here in just a moment. First, I don't want to lose this. We had $2 in the tip jar from Sean Manahan. He says that the biggest gain for the Steelers for 2021 is Renegade. I do have to admit, I'm excited. I'm ready to get back to Heinz Field. I am. I'm really looking forward to it. Just the whole notion of having fans there. That'll be a big advantage for 9 games. I'll tell you.
Yep.
Would you agree with that one there, Geoffrey?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Absolutely. The fans are a special part of the whole Steelers experience. They are loud. It's a great atmosphere, and I think it did mess with that team not having that. I think you'll see players play better with that. I think you'll see some guys that struggled at times get over those struggles because they're going to have people cheering for them.
Exactly. So with that, before we get into the linebackers, we're going to go ahead and get our break here, come back, and Geoffrey's like, wow, we did one position and here we go. But yeah, that's how we go. That's how we roll. That's why we prioritize. Because we're going to talk about what we need to talk about. So if you are on the audio side, make sure you go ahead, click on over to part 2 so you can hear the continued breakdown of the losses versus gains. If you're here with us on YouTube or Facebook, hold on for a few seconds and we'll be right back. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we are back with part 2 of the curtain call. This is not your typical curtain call. This is not Michael Beck. This is behind the Steelers curtain co-editor, not deputy editor, co-editor Dave Schofield, filling in for Michael after he filled in for me last night on the Scobro Show. But as always, here is Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, you still doing good? Having fun so far?
Yeah, we're doing good. Yeah, good. The first half got taken over by me ranting about Bud Dupree. But
hey, at least it got taken over by someone from BTSC and not someone talking about a college program and someone that played 15 years. I don't know. I'm just saying, in case you didn't realize it, we did not bring in a guest this week. That is something that is special for Michael and Geoffrey. Geoffrey and I are taking this chance to just do a fun show together where we can talk about our article series, Steelers Vertex, and what we're working on now, which is losses and gains for the 2021 Steelers. What did they lose? What did they gain? And it's not necessarily they lost more than they gained or gained more than they lost. It's different. Geoffrey just laid that out, that Alex Highsmith is a good player. Bud Dupree is a great player. They're just don't expect one to do what the other one does. They're not the same type of player. So with that, we're going to roll into inside linebackers. And what we did there was we looked at who did the Steelers lose versus who did they gain. This is a 2-part article because what we did was we said technically they lost Avery Williamson and they gained Devin Bush back from injury. Then we talked about the second half of it as saying, well, what they have is who's next to Devin Bush, and they still have Robert Spillane and Vince Williams, who basically, when they were both healthy, they were doing the 2 roles rather than just having to be one. Where do you want to attack this one to start with, Geoffrey? We
talked significantly about Devin Bush to start, so I'm gonna. I love Devin Bush. He's my guy. But we can kind of gloss over that. He is amazing. He's fantastic. The one weakness in his game, if you want a weakness in Devin Bush's game, it's actually blitzing. He is not a very good blitzer, especially in pass rush. He just doesn't. He doesn't thrive in that area. When they used him that way in 2019, the results weren't great. It was just kind of like meh. So you just don't. You don't. So in 2020, he was in coverage a ton. His sideline to sideline speed is ridiculous. Was one of my favorite things is watching plays where you see a running back go outside and the defensive line, Bud Dupree would stretch the play, force him outside, and all of a sudden you see Devin Bush and Terrell Edmunds gaining on the guy. And they're trying to go outside and turn the corner, and it's like you can't. Even if you shake Devin Bush, Terrell Edmunds is right there too. You've got 2 guys back there that are just wicked fast sideline to sideline, and both of them solid tacklers. So they're ridiculous. His ability to do that is fantastic. Him in coverage, despite his height, he's shorter, fantastic in coverage. Devin Bush is the huge boost to this team in 2021. He is coming back And that's going to be a great benefit to the Steelers.
So do you have any idea how many times he was blitzed in 2019 and 2020, according to Pro Football Reference?
I do not know.
According to PFR, in his 16 games in 2019, he was blitzed 37 times.
A little over, like 2 1/3 times a game.
Yeah. In his 5 games of 2020, he blitzed 27 times.
Wow. So they blitzed him more.
According to PFR, they have that he blitzed more.
Okay.
But yet he had 1 hurry, 1 sack, and 3 pressures is what he was doing. But sometimes you got to think, I don't know that, is he more of a delayed blitzer guy than he would be a flat up blitzer guy, if you know what I mean?
My impression on that would be the Steelers were running a lot of man, and they do a lot of what I know of, what I've always heard called green dog blitzes, but they call it a hug blitz, where if you're covering a linebacker, if you're covering a running back or a tight end, you play tight up to the line, and if they come out in a route, you cover them, and if not, you blitz. And like you are responsible for that player, but you're
if you're covering the running back and he stays in protection, you can block it.
You blitz. So I would assume we're talking like those kind of plays.
Yeah.
Where that's good is for most of it, because they ran a ton of man early in the season. They were running it a lot.
Yeah, and I really like that with the whole notion if you're doing that with man, because if a linebacker's responsibility is the running back, and then the running back doesn't go anywhere, and if the linebacker just basically hangs back to wait for him to do something, you're allowing that running back to block somebody else.
Yeah.
So either take advantage of him blocking someone else and blitz there, or make him have to block you so maybe someone else can get free to get in there.
Now you just gave us Devin Bush's number. Do you have Robert Spillane's?
I can get that here if you.
While you get that up, I'll talk about Avery Williamson while you do that. Avery Williamson, the guy we lost. I mean, I did a whole thing on him. He's basically a guy who stops the bleeding. He's a linebacker that's going to run people down. He's got great hustle. He's got a great motor. He plays back a bit. You know, he's kind of that linebacker that he's going to get you a lot of tackles. He's going to make sure plays that gain yards don't gain a ton of yards, which has value on a worse defense than the Steelers. But when you're on the Steelers defense, like, we're not looking to stop a running back at 6 yards. You know, we're looking to get him in the backfield. Like, that's like, we're not that team that's like, oh, can you just please bring him down?
That
please
sounds like the Jets.
Don't get more than 6 yards. That has value, right? If you're a team that's kind of skimping on your front line, you're looking at your front four and you're saying, our defensive line's not that great, then Avery Williamson is your guy. The Steelers, he was kind of like, things are getting bad here. Let's bring this guy in, because if we get any more injuries, and we did have more injuries. At one point, we had Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, and Vince Williams out. And then Ulysses Gilbert got injured in his first game he ever played. And we had Marcus Allen and Avery Williamson as our starting 2 inside linebackers.
And they're not bringing up to Gray Scales off the practice squad. And
not good, right? Not good. Avery Williamson, that's him, right? Yeah. He's a guy who has value for a team that needs that kind of player on their defense. That's not the Steelers. So he's not a big loss. Did you find the numbers?
Oh yeah, I got him.
All right.
So you want to know how much Robert Spillane was blitzed? How many times he blitzed? I keep hearing the way I keep phrasing it. I'm like, yeah, man, he was blitzed. That's not what I mean. How many times he blitzed? Okay, not was blitzed. Ooh, okay, 30 times.
How many times was Robert Spillane blitzed in 2020?
Yeah, man, he was blitzed
every game, man. He was blitzed every game.
30 times he was set on a blitz. 4 hurries, 1 quarterback knockdown, 2 sacks, and 7 pressures. So only 3 more than Devin Bush on the season, but I mean a lot more production. You know,
a lot better results. Yeah. And Vince Williams too. Everyone saw when blitz. Yeah. Vince Williams is a fantastic blitzer. So like this is what excites me about this season, even as much as Michael Beck and I talked about getting that young stud inside linebacker to play next to Bush and be that like more athletic, freakish athlete, Vince Williams style hitter, like a Zaven Collins that we were kind of fans of. We've got those guys. We've got guys that are good enough, right? We've got Vince Williams and Robert Spillane. We can let Devin Bush play back. Spillane, one of my favorite things in an interview is that they asked him what the Steelers wanted him to work on, if they were going to have him work more on run support, different things. And he said, the Steelers said, don't worry about your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. Focus on coverage and hug blitzing. And I was just, when I heard that, I was like, that's what I want to hear.
Because that's what they do. You take guys, you take what they do, and they do well, and you put them in that situation to do it.
Yep.
That's what you have to do. Get better at what you do. Max
yourself out in those areas, and that's how we're going to use you. And so, alongside Devin Bush, expect to see Robert Spillane in passing downs, in passing situations. If they're and I don't want to be like Robert Spillane's the nickel linebacker, and Vince Williams is the base front seven base set inside linebacker. I don't want to go there because if you're facing a team that passes a ton out of heavy sets, or you're facing a team that runs a lot out of trips, you may switch that up. You may say, you know what, we want Vince Williams in on nickel. And maybe against someone else, like a Baltimore, you may say we want Robert Spillane in there when they do heavy sets. If they're throwing out of heavy sets, you may want that. So to me, like it's more Vince Williams is going to focus on blitzing, short zones. He's going to be your run guy. Robert Spillane's going to be the guy in man, better in man, and better on passing downs.
All right, I have so many follow-up questions. It's not funny. I'm going to ask one. I want a quick answer.
Okay,
you can give me yes or no. Will you see Bush, Williams, and Spillane all on the field at the same time at all in 2021?
Yes.
Okay, you think that they could possibly do that? All right, I was curious.
Last year they did all three outside linebackers because they didn't have the inside linebackers, and when they went big, they did 3 outside linebackers. This year, they don't have the outside linebackers. They have the inside linebackers.
And they have the guys to do it, assuming they're healthy. Now, speaking of being healthy, we talked about the Steelers taking players and taking what they do well and putting them in that situation for them to have more success. Is by doing that, which I think is really what you want to do. But this is the NFL, and we all know that stands not for long when it comes to players and their career and stuff like that. And you deal with injury. Like me coaching high school, I could do it all the time because it was rare when I was losing players all the time because of injury. It's not the same speed. It's not the same physicality with these grown men out there flying at each other that are the most, elite athletes in the world that are doing this. There's going to be injuries that occur. If the Steelers are constantly taking players and building to their strengths, does that create more of a problem when someone goes down for injury and you have someone else that has to replace them? Is that what we saw in 2020? That as the injuries began to mount up for the Steelers, that things that they had been doing all season, they couldn't do the same things because they didn't have the same players with the same strengths. Do you think that was a problem?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the big thing is they have plans to cover for people, right? They have ways to shift people and cover for them. When you see that run dry is when 3 cornerbacks are out.
Yeah.
When you're missing or you have both Hayden and Nelson out. Yeah. And it's just not good. We don't have 2 backup starting, outside cornerbacks.
Bush, Williams,
just don't have that.
All out at the same time. Yeah.
Or if you have, all 3 of your linebackers out, they could cover for Bud Dupree. And they were able to cover last year for Bud Dupree and Devin Bush both being out. Yeah. Like, that's incredible. They kept it going. It wasn't
you could argue that when
quite at the same level, but it was a really good defense.
Yeah, that when you added Joe Hayden being out as well in the playoffs is what kind of fell apart.
When you had Alex Highsmith, Joe Hayden, Devin Bush, you mean
all
of that.
And Alex
Highsmith. Too many holes.
Beyond that, yeah. It was just
too
much.
Many holes.
So, yeah. And that's going to be a problem whenever people go down to injury no matter what. That's why so many times people are like, well, they talked about, do you want Josh? Last year, people were like, or no, it was the year before, 2019, right before Ben got hurt. Well, do you want a Josh Dobbs as your number 2 quarterback because he could come in and do something different like we saw in week 17 last year? Or do you want someone that you don't have to have a whole different system when a quarterback steps out for a little bit? Other teams have had the same problem where you say that quarterback might not fit as the backup because if something happens, we'd like to someone that at least has, similar style, similar strengths. You're always going to be dealing with that. So needless to say, I think inside linebacker for the Steelers is, if you're talking about Devin Bush coming back, is where you have the most gain versus the loss of anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just if you're talking about him coming back. And you also have to remember with outside linebacker, if you're saying, well, you didn't have Bud Dupree for the last 5 games, how much of a loss is he? Because they didn't have him for 6 games out of the season. But we knew there was enough of Bud Dupree in 2020 to get more than halfway there to know what it was. So we got to hit some cornerback here before we go, the corners, don't you think?
Yep.
So the Steelers chose to move on from Steven Nelson. It's not that they lost him to free agency. And I still get frustrated because I see it in comments in the articles and different things on social media. People still think that the Steelers chose Juju over Steven Nelson because of the timing of it. Juju's deal did not even come close to spending what the Steelers gained by releasing Nelson. I mean, Juju's deal was nowhere close to that. But I mean, they saved over $8 million. I mean, well, then minus displacement with Steven Nelson, and Juju's cap hit this year is 1.7. That's not what it was. So don't think of it they should have kept Nelson and not re-signed Juju. They would have had to do something else anyway because they still wouldn't have had the money. So they chose Joe Hayden over Steven Nelson.
Well, I actually think it's a little different than that.
You do?
It's more new. I'll say there's a little more to it, but there definitely is. They did choose Hayden over Nelson, and there's a reason for that. We've covered. Man, I've done so many film rooms on Nelson and Sutton this offseason. Yeah, because we covered Nelson when he was a returning guy on the Vertex, and we're like, yeah, he's got 1 year left on his deal. Let's cover what we can expect for the next year, and then he's gone.
We're like, let's sign him to an extension, get that cap number down. Well,
yeah, and then he wasn't. And I think what happened there was when the Steelers couldn't sign Hilton and they signed Sutton. When they got Sutton and not Hilton, Nelson was gone. That, in my opinion, is the moment the Steelers looked at Nelson's contract and said, we can play Sutton out there. Because what you see on film is when Cameron Sutton was playing for Joe Hayden and they had him try to fill what Joe Hayden did, it was awful. But when they had Cameron Sutton fill in for Steven Nelson, he slid straight in and did exactly what Steven Nelson did and did it at a really high level, a starter capable level. My argument is he's not Steven Nelson. He's not entirely Steven Nelson. This is our most recent Vertex was on
today.
The Steelers losing Nelson and replacing him with Sutton. So go to the site, check that out if you want a little more into this. But Sutton is only a little bit behind Nelson, right? There are some ways that Nelson is better than Sutton. Sutton is a solid replacement for Steven Nelson. So that solves that one, right? Now you have to replace.
What's the issue? You laid it out very well in the article. You can bring it up here. And actually, Andrew, I think, brought it up way early in the live chat based on the article. It's the physicality, right?
Yeah. Cam Sutton coming out of college was great playing the ball in the air, was great running with people. When receivers would put a hand on him, he would disappear, right? He just disappeared when anyone touched him. In the run game, he was terrible. He has gotten substantially better over the years, but that is not an area of strength for him. It's just, you either have that naturally or you don't. You can't change that. He has gotten significantly better to where it's not the negative it was, where he went from being like, a poor man's Tre'Davious White to just not even being able to get on the field except as a dime corner. And one of the reasons they used him in dime is they could hide him. They could hide his lack of physicality by playing him deep. Deep zone, he's phenomenal. All these places that are like, oh, he's a safety. He's not really. He's just in deep zone and passing downs. He's great. He's great in coverage. He's great playing the ball. So to me, Sutton's great there. His physicality, if receivers get hands on him and they're getting into hand fighting, he has all kinds of problems dealing with that. If he is able to stay off of them and stay out of reach and out of contact with them, he's phenomenal. He's absolutely phenomenal. And the Steelers are going to have to work that because Steven Nelson, despite being similar in size and just as good, slightly better than Cameron Sutton, even at deep coverage and deep zone stuff, he could handle the physicality better. So that is where the drop off there will be. And that's just an adjustment. You're going to have to adjust to that.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify something. I actually mixed up Juju Smith-Schuster's cap number with Cam Sutton's cap number. Juju Smith's cap number for this year is $2.4 million. It's Cameron Sutton that's $1.7 million. So when I was comparing him to Steven Nelson, I was already jumping ahead to comparing that of cost above replacement. When I mentioned that,
wasn't Nelson's hit bigger than Sutton's entire contract for 2 years?
His hit was, yes, absolutely. Because
his cap hit was bigger than like.
I can tell you what it is. What it was Steven Nelson, even right now, the Steelers took a dead money hit of $6.17 million, but they saved $8.25 million. He had he would have been a more than $14 million cap hit this year.
So he saved 8.25, and what did Sutton sign for?
He
2
signed,
years, wasn't it right around 8?
Yeah, it was. Hold on, I can tell you the exact amount if I can get these ads to go off my screen. That exactly. It was 9.
9. Okay,
9.
I knew it was like for 2 years. It was right around what they saved with Nelson. So it was an easy decision. You've got Sutton for 2 years for basically what you were going to pay Nelson for.
Nelson for 1. Yes. So, and they did the whole void year trick with him that they finally started doing for the first time ever this offseason. So so you're getting just a different corner. And like you said, Cam Sutton's he's not going to be as much in the run in run support as you had with Steven Nelson.
And also Steven Nelson wasn't like Joe Hayden in that area, right? Yeah. Joe Hayden is a phenomenal run stuffing corner. Nelson was not. Nelson could get physical with people better, than a Cam Sutton, but it wasn't great. You're not talking about a guy who was a really physical corner here. We're not talking about a guy who excelled in that area. He just was better than Cam Sutton at it. It's not a huge drop off. It's not like a major. It's a weakness we already had that now is a little bit weaker for a lot less money.
Yeah. Now something that we haven't talked about yet that I'm going to say because we have to talk about the loss at the cornerback position of Mike Hilton. Is there a possibility that Cam Sutton does not win the outside starting cornerback job? Could you see someone like a James Pierre or even coming out of nowhere, a Justin Lane getting that job over Sutton? Or do you think it's more of a situation where Sutton's the outside guy, but he's also going to be your best slot guy and he jumps in and one of those other guys move the outside?
I'm going to flip on you on this one.
Or do you think someone like Pierre's going in the slot?
Because he is such a different player from Mike Hilton. Such a different player. And the Steelers are used to having a physical corner in the slot. The slot is also a place you can hide cornerbacks with less long speed if they're smart. If they react quick, they're smart and they're fundamentally sound. And if you're talking about a guy who's physical, who's smart, who's fundamentally sound on film and less long speed, James Pierre is that guy. I know James Pierre played outside in college. He only played outside last year. That was a rookie, right? He was a rookie. I think the best bet on the roster to fill that slot role right away for Mike Hilton is probably going to be a James Pierre. He won't be the blitzer that Mike Hilton was, but he's at least a physical presence and he's very smart and incredibly fundamentally sound. I think he could really be an asset in the slot. I think if you play him at corner, he is a strong side corner. He is Joe Hayden. He's that left side of the defense, right side of the offense, strong side corner. He is not a Steven Nelson weak side corner. He's not Cam Sutton. He's not that side of the field. So to me, Pierre is Joe Hayden's backup and possibly the nickel. I think he could fill that nickel spot. I don't expect Cam Sutton to slide inside when we go nickel or dime. Watching his stuff, the more I've worked on him and Nelson,
but
I think he's
I understand
outside.
what you're saying, but after seeing what you showed today with the physicality, I understand that, because you do need someone in that slot corner position that's going to be more physical. So I think
basically,
basically
the slot cornerback is your I think it's a Sam linebacker. That's your Sam linebacker, right? Basically, you're taking how we even do a nickel in the Steelers is a 4-3 look, but one of the linebackers has to go out and cover a receiver. If you think of it that way, and then you make that linebacker Mike Hilton, you have the Steelers nickel defense. Yeah, that's how it basically works. So in run fills and things, that spot's still important. That spot is still very important for run defense.
Backer, someone had said on a podcast before.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what the Steelers look for.
Is what it is. Yeah,
Steelers look for cornerbacks that play like linebackers all the time. They're always looking for those guys.
And they went out and signed some undrafted free agents. They said he's going to be a safety. Their 7th-round draft pick in Trey Norwood. But we'll see how they want to use him with something like that. To me, I think they've taken a lot of players and thrown into the mix. What's that?
Jack of all trades safety.
Yeah.
Which you know what sounds like? Cam Sutton.
Yeah.
You watch the film, you know who he looks like? Early in his career, Cam Sutton. That's what he looks like.
So in other words, what Cam Sutton was doing in dime might be what you can look for.
Yeah, if you actually just take Cam Sutton's role he played in certain packages in dime, right? And you could put Norwood there right today and be like, do what you did in college, because that's what you did. And that's where you're best, is that exact role.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, I feel like there's a lot of, because I did the article saying, basically I'm here as the anti-Michael Beck, because I did the article saying 3 reasons why the Steelers shouldn't add a free agent before training camp. Because, and it's funny, someone in the comments says, I can give you 4 reasons. And they named 4 positions. I'm like, guess what you just did? You proved my point. My point is, if the Steelers only have money to add 1 more player, but you could possibly need them at 4 different positions, then don't add any player. You wait to see where you need it. That's my point. And that's what I'm like, I'm fine with them not signing anyone. I know Michael's been pulling his hair out to where he's going to start looking like us because he wants them to add another player and this, there, the other thing. I don't know if you, I did a silly article about the next 3 anti-Steelers narratives. And I actually talked about one of them was Canada's offense won't work in American football, and did a whole thing about, them talking about that. So then I talked about Michael Beck being Canadian and threw that in there as well. But that one was a fun weekend article. But
and if you look at the defensive backs, if that kid from Michigan State, the undrafted free agent who I can never remember his name.
Shakur, is it Brown?
Shakur Brown. Good job. Yeah. Yes. If he's our 6th cornerback and he's good, right? And Trey Norwood is solid, and Justin Lane is serviceable.
To add another corner now.
You're 6 deep. All of a sudden, your depth isn't great, but you're 6 deep. And
that is my point that I was trying to tell to people. I'm like, what if all of a sudden everyone's like, oh no, I'm really worried about corner. Well, what if these young guys that you're hoping maybe you can get 1 of them to stick? What if 2 of them do?
Yeah.
What if, oh my goodness, 3 of them do? Then guess what? Then you have more corners, then you can't keep them all. And then you worry about losing them. Or, can you get them to the practice squad? Things like that. That's why, and you're going to have a bigger pool of players when roster cuts down happen. And roster cuts down happen August 31st, and the Steelers' first game is September 12th. You have a whole extra week in there this year to help get someone up to speed if you have to do that. But my thing is, if you're like, oh, yes, I do think that the Steelers could be in trouble with their depth at outside linebacker. They have to have everyone that they have fit and be ready. And if they don't, they're in trouble. But what if they do, and what if they suffer an injury to 3 of their cornerbacks? Then corner is what they need and not outside linebacker. You talk about offensive tackle. What if all of a sudden Dan Moore comes out of nowhere and he's pushing both of those guys so much that they're like, oh my goodness, we got 3 guys and they're all battling so much. Look how good all of them are getting because of this battle. I'm scared to death at offensive tackle, like most Steeler fans are. But what if there's a potential that they actually rise to the occasion and you have so many bodies there that then if you add another one, someone's going to get cut. So that's why I'm in the wait and see with these other things, because I think corner, they've added a lot of interesting pieces. From Duke. What's the corner from Duke? I can't remember. I think it's Gilbert. He's the one who I think it's a Gilbert or something like. I can't remember his name. I should know it because I did it.
Drawing blank.
Because he's a cousin of like Darrelle Revis or something like that. I'm sure someone will put it in the live chat there. So that. Oh, and someone said Lamont Wade. He's actually, I think he's a safety. But that now we get back to it. It was from Duke. He was really good and had tied for interceptions in the NCAA as a sophomore, and then had a horrific hip displacement injury, surgery, all kinds of stuff. Has played like 4 games in the last 3 seasons, something crazy like that. He's someone who you thought might have been a first-round draft pick after his sophomore year, and then instead he doesn't get drafted because of the injury concern. What if, and this isn't about future injuries. Oh, he's injury prone. This is about is his hip to a place where he can play in the NBA, NFL, NBA. Can he play CB in the NFL? Okay, that's where the B came in. Can he play in the NFL? Either he's recovered and he can and is that same player, or he can't do with his hips. He can't turn his hips like he used to, and he can't. He's an intriguing guy to think of. He could be an amazing player, or he could just be, nope, he just can't do it anymore. They have these possibilities, and they have so many possibilities at corner, in my opinion. Mark Gilbert. Thank you, Andrew Wilbar. I was right. It was Gilbert. Okay. Yeah, had a lot of injuries because I think he came back after the hip and maybe even had an ankle. But I think the ankle, they said, might have been related to how he was playing based on the hip. I'm not even sure. So I think the Steelers have options that could pan out, but they have to be ready if none of them do. Would you think that's fair?
Yeah.
At
I think it's fair too. Plus, you think of how big the rosters are right now, and they're apparently going to keep 90 players for a lot of the time until like the final cuts. Is that what the current plan is? They cut 5 on the Tuesday after week 1 of the preseason, and another 5 the Tuesday following week 2 of the preseason. So they'll have 80 through their third game, and then they have to cut. So yeah, so like you're talking about 3 weeks there where all of a sudden 37, 34, like 30 players from each team. Well, I'm just saying you're talking 1,100 players that are going to be available then that are on rosters right now. Yeah. So like right now you're looking at the bottom of the barrel as opposed to like 1,100 guys are going to be out there that are currently on teams, and there might be some decent players that might fit our scheme better than someone else. Yeah, and in case people are wondering, the practice squad right now it's still officially 12, but it looks like they might adopt the 16 that they had last year. That both coaches and teams, players, everyone liked it. The only question is, do they want to pony up the money to pay those 4 extra guys and have it count towards the salary cap? But it looks like that could be happening too. But guys on other teams' practice squads are fair game to go sign. So it's not that they're not available. We're running over. We have to do the last one. We have to do offensive tackle. Geoffrey, I know one of the guys you really want to talk about. Okay. Good old Chuckles. Yeah, tell me about Chukwuefor. Because really, when we did this one, it was the loss of Alejandro Villanueva, the shift of Chukwuefor, and the return of Zach Banner. Yeah, that's the way we did it. Yeah, watching film, I stated in my thing that I thought Chukwuefor was going to be fine at left tackle, and he would be solid. And I caused some arguments about that over what defines solid. Exactly. Is he going to be good? How good is he? I saw someone say, "Yeah, if you're a Pro Bowler, you're solid." Really? You have to make a. I mean, there's only 4 players. Well, I guess technically 4 per conference that make the Pro Bowl a tackle. So you're telling me there's only 4 players that you could even call solid tackles in each conference? Come on. That can't be your definition of solid. Okay. I'm sorry. So my after that, I actually went back and watched more because I was like, okay, maybe I haven't focused on Chukwuma Okorafor enough. So I looked up who did he play a lot, and who did he play against? And one of the best games, if you want to see Chukwuma Okorafor's game, go watch the wild card game. I know that's a terrible thing to tell people.
That's the one no one wants to watch.
You don't want to watch that. But if you watch Myles Garrett in that game, the start of the game, the Browns send him to Chukwuma Okorafor's side. And the best pass rushes he gets off is when they slant him in and he faces David DeCastro. Because David DeCastro was terrible that game. He was terrible a lot in the season. But he drove David DeCastro. Myles Garrett drove David DeCastro straight into Ben Roethlisberger. And at one play, pushed David DeCastro back. Ben Roethlisberger throws the ball, and he throwing David DeCastro on the ground into Ben Roethlisberger's leg.
Sounds
Myles
like
Garrett
Cam Hayward
threw David DeCastro into Ben Roethlisberger. This is the player we're talking about. Myles Garrett is an absolute beast. Okorafor kept him all away from Ben. Yeah. Like there was one play he kind of like slapped Ben on the back. There was a play where he got a good pressure on Ben because the middle of the line collapsed and Ben couldn't step up at all. Mm-hmm. And if you're dropping from shotgun, you're 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Any edge rusher can take the corner on you. TJ Watt will eat you all day if you can't step up in the pocket there. Myles Garrett's going to be fine. That's the one time he got a good pressure on him. Chukwuma Okorafor is good. He's not great. He's not one of the top tackles in the league. He is really good. Alejandro Villanueva, the last 2 seasons, has not been the same player. He has been dropping off, especially if you look at his stats, his like advanced stats. If you look at pressures he surrendered, his sack rate, stuff like that, they've gone up every season the last like 3 years. And he used to be phenomenal, year, right? And it's kind of inching up there to where now last year he wasn't a great tackle. And Okorafor moves better than Villanueva. Obviously, Villanueva had that ridiculously long reach. He used that incredibly well. Okorafor moves better than him.
So better.
Okorafor has a good what is it called? Anchor. Mm-hmm. Not great, but there's plays. I mean, there are some plays where he really shuts down some big guys. The great defensive tackle from Philadelphia. Just lost his name.
Fletcher Cox?
Fletcher Cox, yes. He had an inside rush against Fletcher Cox he had to defend. And how they pinned the rush and how he had to pick him up was he basically had to pin himself against David DeCastro to even pick up Fletcher Cox and drove him straight back and around Ben Roethlisberger. Fletcher Cox was trying to get to him and he couldn't. He was like the whole time he's going around. He's got the angle to take him. He's already inside, and Okorafor handled it. Yeah. I'm a believer in Okorafor. I think he's going to be a solid, not great, solid left tackle. I think he's a better zone blocker than Alejandro Villanueva. You're not going to see him drive people off the line. He's not Zach Banner. You're going to see Zach Banner move defensive tackles out of the way. You're not going to see Okorafor do that. He's better at sealing players, where he just gets in their way and is like, you're not going to the left. Right? That's all I'm doing. I'm just making sure you don't go this one way and keeping you kind of where you are so the play can get past you. He's fine at that. He moves well. He's good in outside zone. Not great, but he's better than Alejandro Villanueva. So to me, he might be an upgrade at left tackle over what we saw from Big Al last season, right? Not what Big Al was when he was in his prime, when he was at his best. But what we saw from him last season, Okorafor has the potential to be an upgrade. Banner is not quite
potential
pass blocker. Either of the other two are. But they can't touch him in run blocking, especially inside zone where you're double teaming and then going off. He's an absolute monster in that. He's going to be great next to DeCastro. Those two, he's going to help DeCastro bounce back this season if DeCastro still has enough.
Yeah. So would you say you think that some people are like, well, it's your left foot versus your right foot with your step and everything else? Or do you I think it's more of the responsibilities. Right tackle and left tackle, granted, I've come at it from a high school mentality of that is your left tackle was your pass blocker, your right tackle was your run blocker. That's just how it was. in everything that I've coached or played. That's not the exact translation to the NFL, but is it a little bit? And therefore, Chooks is a better fit at left than he is at right?
Absolutely. It's still that system. I mean, we still have, like, Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson play completely different styles. There's a reason Joe Hayden plays on the offensive right, because you run more to the right. You're like, people are still right-handed mostly. You run to the right more than you do to the left, and left runs are usually cutbacks. That's kind of just a thing. The way I've heard it always explained is, you've got right-handed players, you go to the right. You just do, because they're better at it. You put a right-handed running back going to the left, he's got to carry it in his left hand. He's just not. It's not as sound, right? You run more to the right. You're more right focused. So the right tackle is more of a run blocker. It's just kind of how it works.
Yep.
So yeah, I believe that, and it's, to me, if you also watch the film when Chukwuma Okorafor was with Kevin Dotson, right? The few weeks they were together, those two were good together.
So put them both on the left side and let them do their thing.
Yeah, Dotson to me is not. He's going to be such an upgrade on Matt Filer, because Matt Filer was a dude that 1 versus 1, I'm stronger than you, right? I'm strong enough that I can deal with you, and he did that. Like in LA when he was switched to left guard and he guarded Aaron Donald, it was simply, you take Aaron Donald and don't worry about anything else. Like, that's your job. This whole game is you deal with Aaron Donald. That's where he was good. Where he wasn't, Matt Filer struggled, is any kind of zone. Any kind of zone, any kind of stunt where he had to switch players off. They broke through, they got past him. Like, he just wasn't good at that. The teamwork aspect of the offensive line. On an island by himself, he's phenomenal. Kevin Dotson is phenomenal working with the guy next to him. He made Marquise Pouncey look better. He had Chukwuma Okorafor playing better. And now they're on the left side together. That's the left side of your line, is Kevin Dotson, Chukwuma Okorafor. So yeah, maybe Chukwuma Okorafor isn't a power blocker, but you know what? Yeah, honestly, we could have done a 3-part show.
Yeah, we could have done a 3-part show. Andrew Wilbar throws this out there. He says, "Bad is going to have a fit, but I love this extended show." Yeah, we needed to do what we needed to do. So
we had to do a little bit of offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, we had to do something on the offense, because that's honestly
not like we can say next week we're going to do this again and we'll do the offense.
Exactly. So my thing when it comes to the offensive line is, especially being an offensive line guy, is like, when my brother and I, for the Scobro show, did Steelers that, we thought would be show the most improvement this year from last year, I put Chooks at number 2. I put Highsmith as number 1. I put Chooks at number 2, because I think he's got a chance to be in a situation. It's kind of, poop or get off the pot, get it done. It's do or die time. Last, he's in a contract year and everything else. And we're finally going to put you at the place where it was believed was your strength. You're going to get a chance to see if you can win that job and then do that job.
Yeah. I want to bring this up too, because I got someone snarkily asked, like, did Chukwuma Okorafor even face anybody in college? Like, the last time he played left tackle was in college.
Yeah.
And did he face anyone in college?
I know. I saw this comment and I love your answer.
I went and looked it up.
Yeah.
As a sophomore, he faced senior Joey Bosa at Ohio State. Like, Joey Bosa versus Chukwuma Okorafor.
When Joey Bosa was
a sophomore,
everyone was
shut him down.
Bosa. Yeah.
Bosa did nothing that game. And the next year as a junior, he goes and faces Wisconsin. Guess who he's facing in Wisconsin? None other than
Trent Jordan Watt.
Yeah. TJ got 1 sack on him, and that was an inside blitz. Yeah. That wasn't even Okorafor was blocking someone else. That was on a guard. So he faced TJ Watt and Joey Bosa as a left tackle in college and gave up 0 sacks to either of them. So
you gotta remember that, everybody. Remember that.
That's how he got drafted in the 3rd round. That's why he was a 3rd round draft pick. It's just taking him longer because he's not a good run blocker. Yeah. But he's gotten better, and we're going to run more zone.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a potential for this line to surprise people I mean, I actually have an article coming out tomorrow that shows where the Steelers' offensive line as a unit, where Pro Football Focus has them ranked, which is almost at the very bottom. And I'm like, which I understand, because I mean, look at it. David DeCastro is the only player that played more than half the games at the position that he's going to be playing, scheduled to be playing in 2021. That's it.
And at the end of the season, you can make an argument he was one of our worst linemen.
Yeah. I mean, he was struggling.
Not good.
But I mean,
he was not healthy. He wasn't good.
But I mean, so Chooks is moving positions. Kevin Dotson's moving over to the left side. You're going to have a new center. All this, I understand why you would say, oh, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Steelers line. But I'm also telling you that there's a chance that they could really make some magic happen. Yeah. It's all going to come together in the right way. It can. The only question is, will it?
Well, here's the thing. How much confidence do you have in that line week one?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. You're not sitting there looking at that line being like, the first snap of the first game, they're going to be awesome. They're not. They're not likely to be there. Kendrick Green is probably not your opening day center. It's BJ Finney. Hopefully he can be what he was in Pittsburgh before and not what he was in 2020 with all the extenuating circumstances.
What he wasn't in 2020 because he didn't get an offensive
he was
snap.
Not.
Yeah, he wasn't anything in 2020.
Hopefully David DeCastro bounces back.
Yeah.
Hopefully Zach Banner is the guy he was week one of 2020 or maybe even better.
Injury.
Hopefully Chukwuma Okorafor is good at left tackle and Kevin Dotson grows into being even a better player than he was last season. Week one may not be that week, but week 3, week 4, you're going to see this offensive line start to look good. And I think you're going to see this offensive line be a lot better than we think.
Yeah. They might have to grow together and grow into each other. So, and it's funny because Donald says that CBS says about Hassenauer starting. That was one thing about PFF. They didn't even mention BJ Finney at center. Everyone's forgetting that it's a possibility, except for Steeler fans. And then I think too many Steeler fans are putting too much faith in Finney from saying, oh, he should be our starter. Finney wasn't our starter when he was here. He was a backup. That's what he was.
Yeah.
And I feel he was a better guard than center. Like I said, all I remember is him stepping on Mason Rudolph's foot and getting him knocked out of the Jets game on his first play in. So we have gone way over tonight, but we had fun with it. And I'm sorry, Bad, but it's what we did. So make sure that you are checking out all the podcasts. Make sure you're checking out the website. Lots of good stuff continues to come to you through the entire offseason. Geoffrey, anything you want to plug or anything you want to say here before we head out?
Eventually, I'll have more film rooms coming out. We've got some weird problem with our software.
Yep.
I'm in talks with people. I can't load certain film clips up. And so my film rooms are kind of on hold. Everything's on hold right now. But as soon as that's fixed, I'll be dropping more on my Offense in Focus series, talking about Matt Canada and what he was doing in college. That's going to get to a whole bunch of different college teams. That's going to cover what he did in LSU eventually, and eventually get to stuff we saw early in the season for the Steelers. Got a lot of great stuff planned for that series. But really, watch for the Vertex every Wednesday-ish.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever we get it out.
Yeah, Wednesday is what we shoot for. I think last week it was Thursday. By the time it got around.
Not always great. Yeah. We're not always the most timely.
But
we're not the most timely on our show tonight either. So
exactly.
Not always
if you haven't
happy
learned
with
anything about us,
timing.
You learned
That's
that
not going to be happy with our show timing.
Yep. But you know what? We love our podcast producer. So we better cut it off before an hour and 20 minutes. So and I'll be back on tomorrow night with the preview. I'll finally be back doing that. I missed a week. I was really bummed because that's always lots of fun. And I tell you what, man, I'm excited about this preseason because I want to see things like the offensive line. I want to see things like the depth at corner. Those are the things that I want to see. Can't wait for that Hall of Fame game. People are like, oh, well, if the starters are going to play, I'm like, fine. That's not who I want to see as much of the preseason.
I don't want to see them.
Yeah. So
because they're not going to really play anyways. Like, what's TJ Watt going to do? Run out there, stretch a bit, run a few times, and then go to the sideline.
I don't want to see TJ Watt. I want to see Cassius Marsh. I want to see Q from the U. That's what I want to see. I don't even want to see Alex Highsmith. Maybe a little bit, just to show us how ripped and buff he is now. But just
Guinness Book of World Record holder Dave Schofield, the first person on planet Earth ever to say, I want to see Cassius Marsh out there.
No, I don't want to see him out there during the regular season. I want to see him out there in the preseason. I want to see those two guys out there showing that one of them could actually come on and do something if they had to be called on for a few plays. So that's it. That's what I want to see. So those are the battles I'm looking for. Is the other depth pieces. So with that, we're going to have to curtain call it after all to finally end this tonight. Geoffrey, been lots of fun, and we'll unfortunately the two of us, we'll have to see about trying to do this again sometime, because this was a lot of fun. Yeah. So we can't see you next week, but you can see me tomorrow night on the preview, and you can see Geoffrey next week on the curtain call. Thanks for joining us.